Did you know, Hyun, wine wasn't always this vibrant, seductive beverage we enjoy today?
What do you mean?
It all started thousands of years ago, in the Neolithic era. Imagine, sun-soaked fields, a cluster of ripe, succulent grapes hanging from the vine, and then a miracle happens.
Miracle sounds biblical?
Perhaps. One might say the mysteries of fermentation captured the imagination of our ancestors. Water, grapes, airborne yeast, tranquility, an alchemic reaction of time, yielded a concoction that was intoxicating and delightful. Over centuries, this chance discovery was refined into an enthralling art.
An accidental elixir, then. Fascinating.
Yes. This elixir soon acquired its own vocabulary, rituals. It became a cornerstone of civilizations, a symbol of joy, of sorrow, of worship, of victory and courage. And who would have thought this humble fruit could yield such an array of flavors?
And just as the grape evolves into wine, the craft of winemaking has also matured over the years, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Through both gloomy and flourishing times, winemaking traditions have been cultivated like age-old vines, withstanding tyrants and kings, the incessant march of technology, even the icy stare of the Prohibition.
Wine does have a persistent spirit.
Indeed. Like a timeless ballad, the world of winemaking narrates a tale of patience, passion, innovation, and legacy. And just like a glass of fine vintage, the depth is in its journey.
Let's think about it, Evelyn. The classic Greek tragedies mentioned Dionysus, the god of winemaking, grape harvest, and wine. Winemaking was deeply woven into the fabric of their society.
A divine blessing, one might say. And not just confined to Greece, wine and viticulture were instrumental in the development of civilization in the warm Mediterranean, kissed by the sun. The pharaohs celebrated wine. The Romans forged roads, conquered terrains, spread vines across Europe. Wines were believed to please their pantheon of gods.
Entire dynasties were built under the influence of wine. It made its mark on many European fronts, the medieval times of Charlemagne, the indulgent courts of Versailles, and to a time when the church kept viticulture alive during the Dark Age.
That's what intrigues me, Hyun, the role wine played in the dire times of world wars, diseases, and recessions.
Every challenge thrown at them, the vine growers, wine producers adapted and bounced back with a stronger spirit. They braved the deadly frost, the onslaught of phylloxera, the city sieges interrupting their trade routes. Yet, here we are, sipping the stories of their courage, their persistence.
It is such a resilient industry, its roots embedded deep, growing through the hardships, blossoming beyond. I admire that. Even after the shockwaves of Prohibition, the world wars, and more recently global wine glut, wine's allure never waned. It found its fervor in new homes, brewed to the tunes of delicious sophistication.
Evelyn, we've been admiring the resilience and history of wine. But now let's shift gears to consider the life cycle of a vine and the rhythm of a winemaking season. Just like the lead-up involved to properly cook a dish at my restaurant, making wine takes meticulous timing and keen understanding of the annual life cycle.
The rhythm of a year? I adore that sentiment. I think in my world of mixology, we strive to capture that rhythm in each cocktail we create. So, tell me, where does the year start in a vineyard, Hyun?
Well, it all starts in winter when the vineyard is at rest. There isn't any visible growth, but the roots continue to grow and gather nutrients. This is also the time for pruning, crucial for the vine's future productivity. Once spring comes, bud break happens. This is when new shoots start to grow on the vines.
Like a vine breaking free from its winter sleep, yeah? Such a beautiful image. What is the next stage? Is it flowering?
Exactly. Flowering happens usually in late spring, early summer, Evelyn. After flowering, we have fruit set when the fertilized flower begins to develop into a grape. Now, this period is critical. Weather conditions could significantly impact the size and quality of the fruit.
It reminds me of how crucial the quality of my ingredients is when crafting a cocktail. I am starting to see how important the harvest is. So, once the grapes are ready, harvest begins?
Yes, and it's perhaps the most exciting time in a vineyard. Harvest is generally in late summer to early fall, depending on the climate, grape variety, and the winemaker's style. Optimal ripeness is the goal. Every decision is aimed at finding the perfect balance of sugar, acid, and tannin levels in the grape. Then the picked grapes head off to the cellar for the next steps, which we'll explore soon.
It's a specialty of yours, isn't it, Hyun? Mastering the precise timing and conditions to create culinary art. I imagine it's much the same in the winery's cellar, where harvested grapes find their way next. It's the excitement of turning raw ingredients into something magical.
Indeed, Evelyn, the journey inside the cellar is a fascinating part of winemaking. Essential post-harvest tasks wait here to ensure the final product reaches its finest potential.
What's the initial step, Hyun?
It's called destemming and crushing. This is when the grapes are removed from their stems and lightly crushed. Think of it as preparing the grapes to bear their flavors and aromas aloft.
Winemaking is starting to sound reminiscent of my cocktail mixes again. The flavor extraction seems to be happening at every stage.
You're not wrong there. The unique flavors are seeping out at each stage, and it intensifies in the must stage, where crushed grapes transform into grape juice, ready to be fermented.
I've read about fermentation. So that's when the sweet grape juice begins to turn into alcohol?
Yes, the real alchemy begins here. Yeast is introduced, which kickstarts the fermentation, transforming the sugar in the juice into alcohol. This process happens under specific temperature conditions to control the speed and ensure proper fermentation.
Making perfect wine seems to be more about patience and precision. I believe the wine isn't ready yet, right after fermentation?
Correct. The winemaking in the cellar is far from complete. After fermentation concludes, the wine is usually left to age, either in oak barrels or stainless steel tanks, depending on the winemaker's style and the wine type. The wine's character evolves and deepens during this aging.
So, there is no rushing this. The wine takes its own sweet time, maturing and getting ready for us to savor.
Exactly, Evelyn. Each phase in the winery's cellar is carefully executed, ensuring that the wine we pour into our glasses is of splendid quality.
Of course, none of the intricate winemaking processes we've discussed would exist without the true artists of this craft, the vintners or winemakers. They are the ones who dedicate their lives to deciphering the language of the vines, aren't they, Hyun?
Absolutely, Evelyn. Winemakers follow the cues of nature, making key decisions that shape a wine's character. Decisions like when to harvest the grapes are critical. It can make or break the wine's final profile.
So the power to shape the wine lies in their hands, from the nuances in flavor, aroma, right down to the texture?
Yes, indeed. A vintner's experience, intuition, and creativity come into play, and these choices influence the wine style, its acidity, tannin structure, sweetness, color, and much else.
Can you tell me more about their contributions?
Yes, it's exciting to see more women taking charge in this traditionally male-dominated industry. Pioneers like Elisabetta Foradori in Italy and Lalou Bize-Leroy in France are crafting phenomenal wines, garnering accolades worldwide. More recently in Asia, too, like Grace Vineyards' Judy Leisner, who's making waves with her wines in Shanxi, China.
Very inspiring, these trailblazing women shattering the glass ceiling. They indeed bring a distinct perspective to winemaking. Their successes unquestionably pave the way for many more women to join this enchanting art of winemaking. Those interviews from renowned winemakers were so insightful, weren't they, Hyun?
Truly, it was fascinating to hear them immerse us into their world, full of passion and dedication. Their unique philosophies stood out for me. Each vintner expressed a distinct perspective on winemaking.
Exactly. They acknowledge climate variation, soil composition, and how these factors influence the grape's characteristics. It's like they're in a dialogue with nature when making decisions about harvest and winemaking methods.
Their camaraderie with climate and terroir was apparent, each vintner exuding a sense of stewardship, a tangible bond with their vineyard, almost a parental pride, so to speak.
Yes, from valuing the nuances in every vineyard block, cherishing the character of each grape, to capturing these ideologies in their bottles. But Hyun, how do these philosophies influence the winemaking process itself?
Well, vintners' unique philosophies guide their winemaking processes. Whether practicing organic viticulture, choosing wild yeasts for fermentation, or restricting oak use to let the grape's voice shine, their philosophy is projected into these decisions.
So every bottle of wine is, in essence, a reflection of the vintner's vision and philosophy?
Yes, and their unwavering commitment to authenticity. Every bottle they produce is a testament to their belief system, artistic expression, and deep-rooted respect for the terroir.
Hyun, now that we've contemplated the vintner's artistry, let's unravel the science behind it. How do the grapes transform into this delightful elixir?
Well, Evelyn, it begins with the magic of fermentation. After the harvest, grapes are processed and the resultant juice is stirred with yeast. Kickoff for a grand molecular jamboree.
A jamboree, huh? Sounds fun. What happens in this party?
The yeast feasts on the grape sugars, converting them into alcohol and carbon dioxide, causing eventual death of yeast itself. This process, where sugar makes way for alcohol, is fermentation. It's like a yeast farewell party.
An intriguing personification. But Hyun, could the party go awry?
Good question, Evelyn. Like every party needs careful planning, fermentation does too. The temperature, a key factor here, must be meticulously regulated. Too warm, and the yeast's work speeds up, resulting in an unpleasantly alcoholic wine. Too cool, and the yeast might go dormant, stalling the fermentation. So it's a delicate dance.
So is the dance over once fermentation is done?
Not quite. That's when the slow dance of aging begins. Although not every wine needs aging, its utility lies in the added nuances of flavor and complexity it imparts. During aging, small amounts of oxygen interact with the wine, softening the flavors and integrating its various components into a balanced whole.
So, the dance from fermentation to aging is basically a transformative journey from grape to a charming bottle of wine?
Absolutely, Evelyn. From the lively jamboree of fermentation to the graceful waltz of aging, it's a marvelous journey indeed.
Hyun, let's linger a moment on the topic of aging. The dance doesn't stop at the fermentation stage, does it?
Indeed not. The dance shifts into a slow, deliberate rhythm that allows for time's touch to gracefully alter its taste and aroma. It matures in barrels or stainless steel vessels in a process known as aging. And it's here, Evelyn, where the magic deepens.
I've heard that winemakers often face the dilemma of aging wine in oak barrels or in stainless steel vessels. How do they choose?
That decision, Evelyn, can significantly influence the character of the wine, and it's typically guided by the vintner's vision for the style of the wine. Oak barrels tend to infuse the wine with vanilla, spice, and a toasted nuance, while adding to its oxygen exposure, which softens the tannins.
And what about stainless steel?
Stainless steel tanks, on the other hand, are all about preserving the purity and freshness of the fruit. They provide a kind of neutrality, ensuring very minimal oxygen interaction, which helps to retain the wine's inherent varietal character.
It seems both methods have their unique benefits and challenges. The judicious use of these aging vessels surely adds another layer of complexity, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, Evelyn. Choosing the right aging vessel and the duration of aging is a delicate balancing act, much like an artist choosing the perfect colors and strokes for a masterpiece. It's an integral part of the winemaking process, an art intertwined with science.
So Hyun, shall we take a deep dive into wine terminology?
Certainly, let's start with something basic, bodied. How would you define it, Evelyn?
In cocktail parlance, it's all about the structure on the palate. A full-bodied wine is rich, robust, and layered with complex flavors, as opposed to a light-bodied wine that is delicate and crisp. Think of it as the difference between a warm, hearty stew and a clear, refreshing broth.
And speaking of crisp, that's another term we often hear in relation to white wines, isn't it?
Absolutely. A crisp wine is refreshing, with a lively acidity that perks up your taste buds. It's the type of wine that wakens the palate, like a cool breeze on a hot day.
These terms not only help us appreciate wine better, but they also make talking about wine so colorful. Now there's another term I've always been curious about, dry. Does it just mean the wine is not sweet?
Not necessarily, hun. A dry wine is a wine that has no residual sugar, meaning all the grape sugar has been converted into alcohol during fermentation, leaving no sweetness. However, elements like tannins, acidity, and alcohol can give a perception of dryness too.
Ah, tannins. That's a term we often hear, especially in relation to red wines. How would you define it?
Tannins are naturally occurring compounds in grapes. In wine, they're recognized by that astringent, drying sensation in your mouth. Essentially, Tannins weave complexity into a wine's interaction with our palate, creating a sensation akin to sipping a robustly brewed tea.
I see. So it seems these terms bodied, crisp, dry, and tannins are just metaphors to express the elusive sensory experiences of each wine.
Indeed, Hyun. Wine language may seem intimidating at first, but as we familiarize ourselves with it, it not only helps to understand wine, but also significantly enhances our wine tasting experiences. And we'll further continue to decode such terms in our journey ahead.
Evelyn, when I'm selecting a bottle of wine, I often find myself confused by all the information on the wine label. Do you also find yourself in such situations?
You are not alone, Hyun. Deciphering a wine label can feel like cracking a secret code. But once you know what you're looking at, it's almost as if you're reading the wine's biography.
That sounds exciting. Could you help us decoding one?
Sure, Hyun. Let's imagine a French wine label. The first thing you usually spot is the producer, or the winery's name. Right below, you may find the term Appellation d'origine protégée, which signifies the geographical area where the grapes were grown. It's similar to the Italy's Denominazione di Origine Controllata, or Spain's Denominación de Origen Protegida.
And what about those terms like reserve or estate?
Good question, Hyun. Reserve might suggest that the wine is of high quality, but its use isn't really regulated outside of Spain and Italy. So any winery can use the term reserve on their labels. As for estate, it refers to wine made entirely from grapes grown on the winery's own property.
Isn't there usually a year mentioned on the front?
Ah, the vintage year. Yes, that refers to the year the grapes were harvested. The wine's characteristics can be greatly influenced by the weather conditions of that year. However, keep in mind, non-vintage labeled wines aren't of lesser quality. Non-vintage, or NV, simply means the wine is blended from more than one harvest year, often leading to the consistency in taste.
I see. So the next time we're at our favorite wine shop, we'll feel a sense of familiarity when picking up a bottle.
Absolutely, Hyun. Understanding a wine label can enhance our shopping experience and helps us make more informed decisions. And listeners, remember, the best wine is not always the most expensive one. It's the one you enjoy drinking.
Evelyn, as we've learned throughout this podcast, winemaking is a craft deeply rooted in its geographical origins. And just as cooking techniques and ingredients vary by region, so too do winemaking traditions.
That's a great point, Hyun. From the soils and climates to the native grape varieties, all these factors shape the unique characteristics of a region's wine. How about we journey through a few of these regions?
Let's start where it all began, in the fertile valleys of France. French winemaking is famous for its terroir philosophy, where unique components of the natural environment drive the style of wine. From the cooling influence of the Atlantic on the Loire Valley to the south-facing slopes of the Burgundy, France's varied landscapes all contribute to a diverse range of wines.
Moving on to Spain, the emphasis also lies in the identification of terroirs. However, there's a distinct focus on aging, especially in regions like Rioja, where the Reserva and Gran Reserva designations demand specific lengths of aging before release. The end result? Wines rich in complexity with a unique ability to age in the bottle.
Great insights, Evelyn. And from Spain, a hop over the Mediterranean brings us to Italy, another pioneer in winemaking. Here, the concept of tipicità, or typicity, is vital. This denotes the unique characteristics of wines from a specific region, similar to the French goût de terroir. From the juicy Sangiovese of Tuscany to the robust Nebbiolo of Piedmont, Italy showcases the art of pairing wine with local culinary traditions.
Totally, Hyun. Transitioning now to the New World, the USA, specifically California, reflects a very open-minded approach towards winemaking. Experimentation is embraced here, with vintners keen on exploring different grape varieties and winemaking techniques. Unique to this region is the idea of cult wines, which have a dedicated following and often draw significant attention at auctions.
That's true, Evelyn. Similarly, in Australia, there's a balanced blend of traditional and innovative practices. And then we have South America, where countries like Chile and Argentina are blessed with high-altitude vineyards that produce intensely flavorful wines.
And let's not forget the dormant potential of winemaking in Asian countries. For instance, China, my homeland, is emerging as a significant actor in the global wine scene. The vineyards of Ningxia are gaining recognition for high-quality Cabernet Sauvignon, and local wines like the ice wine enhance the local gastronomical experience.
Evelyn, having traveled through the vinicultural globe, it's time we take one step further to the cellars. By shedding light on some essential open secrets, let's expand on the tools that edge the transformation from grape to wine.
Spot on, Hyun. Indeed, cellar techniques play a cardinal role in achieving that perfect imbibe. As for the viticultural canvas, pressing, fermenting, bottling, each technique imparts its exclusive touch on the finished product.
Classically, are we looking at foot pressing?
Great throwback, Hyun. Yes, the old-world charm of foot-pressing gifted wines an extraordinary character. However, safety regulations and mass production needs have led to a shift towards modern presses. Highly efficient and with temperature control, modern presses ensure a more predictable result.
Hold on. Is temperature control that crucial? You're slipping into science again, let me guess. It affects the color, aroma, even flavors of the wine?
You're right on track, Hyun. A stable environment is key to optimizing the fermentation process. For red wines, fermentation temperatures are usually kept high, preserving those robust, intense flavors. On the other hand, white wines ferment at lower temperatures to extract crisp, delicate aromas.
Fascinating. How about the fermenting vessels, though? We've heard of steel, concrete, even wooden vats. And then there's the whole debate of oak versus steel aging. Is that mere style preference?
Hyun, you're uncorking yet another point. Each material has distinct features. Stainless steel preserves the pure fruit qualities and crispness, while oak adds a layer of spice, smokiness, sometimes vanilla, or caramelized notes. The choice surely introduces a different facet to the wine's personality.
Evelyn, as we're interacting with the essence of winemaking, the dialogue between old wisdom and new perspectives surely makes it more than just a manufacturing process. It's a craft, an art of coaxing out the inherent characteristics of the humble grape.
With the evolving infusion of tech in winemaking, Hyun, have you ever pondered over the classic debate of manual versus machine harvesting?
Well, Evelyn, you've unearthed quite an intriguing topic. I have read a few commentaries which highlighted that traditional hand harvesting caters to the delicate nature of the grapes, particularly for premium wines.
That's right, Hyun. Hand harvesting allows for selective picking, ensuring only the ripest grapes see the inside of a fermentation vat. And it's worth remembering, a few wineries in Italy and France, where respect for tradition runs deep, continue to swear by it. They believe the human touch adds an intangible charm to their nectar of the gods.
Tradition certainly carries an undeniable allure, but we can't ignore the merits of machine harvesting either. On the flip side, the speed, efficiency, and cost-effectiveness it offers is crucial for larger production scales.
Absolutely, Hyun. Large-scale vineyards often rely on machine harvesting to beat nature. Think bad weather that might devastate a crop. It can be a game changer. Yet being less selective, one may argue it compromises the quality of the produce.
Indeed, striking a balance between quality, quantity, and feasibility makes this a complex debate. But the divergence of opinion amongst winemakers proves this truly is a personal choice, and hard to call a universal right or wrong.
Precisely. At the heart, it's about the pursuit of their unique vision of the perfect wine. The beauty of winemaking lies in its diversity, its celebration of tradition and innovation. It's time, folks. The floor is all yours. Fire away.
Our first question comes from a listener named Caleb. He asks, "In your opinion, what makes a wine great?" Interesting question, isn't it, Evelyn?
Absolutely, Hyun. In my opinion, it's not just the taste. It's about the emotions the wine generation. A bit like how a perfect cocktail can transport its imbiber to another place, another time. For me, a great wine captures the essence of its terroir in the bottle, tells a story of its heritage, reflects the heart and soul of its maker.
Well put, Evelyn. We have another question from Sophia. Can you tell me more about organic wines? Now, that sounds intriguing. I know you've been exploring more about sustainable practices in our industry, Evelyn.
Yes, it's been an interesting journey. In essence, organic winemaking involves growing grapes without using synthetic fertilizers or pesticides, and creating wine without adding any artificial additives. But organic isn't just a term. It's regulated by strict guidelines, government bodies, and has to meet certain standards. It's part of a larger global trend toward environmentally friendly practices, which I'm really supportive of.
Indeed. If anyone else has queries regarding sustainability or organic wines, we'd be thrilled to dive into it in future episodes. Let's move on to the next question. Genevieve asks, what role does climate play in taste of wine? Environment is an area we particularly haven't broached yet, Evelyn.
You're right. Climate effects are usually grouped under the French term terroir. It's the combination of environmental factors including soil, geography, and climate that gives a wine its unique flavor profile. Hot climates generally produce bolder, fuller-bodied wines, think Australian Shiraz. Cooler climates can lead to lighter, more delicate flavors, like Pinot Noir from Oregon. But climate alone isn't everything, it's a piece of the puzzle.
That's really insightful. Let's end with one last question from Abigail. She asks, in wines, is expensive necessarily better? Now that's the epic debate, isn't it, Evelyn?
Couldn't be truer, Hyun. I'd argue the answer is both yes and no. A costly wine might hint to its rarity, the finesse in its crafting, or the reputation of the maker. However, a more modestly priced bottle doesn't mean it's lesser in quality. It's all about personal preference and the pleasure you derive from it. What matters is that you find the wine you enjoy and suits your palate. As my grandmother always says, the best bottle of wine is an empty one. As we wrap up this exploration, Hyun, I can't help but marvel at the intricacies of the winemaking process, mastering which is no less than an art.
I echo your sentiment, Evelyn. The intricacies from the botanical to the cellar are comparable to meticulously preparing a gourmet dish. Totally amazing.
The balance of art and science, the pure romance from the vine to the glass. It makes me understand why they say, in wine, there's truth.
That's deep, Evelyn. This journey also elucidates the steady tenacity of the winemakers. They balance nature and nurture, tradition and innovation, to create something remarkable. Something that gives this space its enchanting allure.
Agreed. The role of a winemaker is rather dreamy yet demanding. That balance of the grit and romance that imbues each bottle makes it one of a kind.
Well, folks, we've almost come to the end of this episode. It's been a delightful endeavor to peel back the layers of winemaking and dive into its captivating history and techniques.
In the next episode, we'll be stepping into an entirely novel world of wine tasting. The swirl, the sniff, the sip. It's a ritual, a process, a charming tale of discovery. Physique du vin, as the French say.
I'm looking forward to disentwining the subtle notes engraved in this fabulous elixir. So, dear listeners, keep your wine glasses ready for the next episode. Until then, keep savoring the world of wine. Cheers, Evelyn.
Cheers to that, Hyun. Till next time.